In this week's episode, I combined electronics with some 3D printing. I'll explain it all on today's Filament Friday. Filament Friday is brought to you every week by the generous donations of my Patreon supporters. My channel is CHEP 3D Printing and Electronics, and I've done a lot of 3D printing, but I want to start to introduce even more electronics. And one of the things I want to do is introduce CHEPINO. This is a module I designed back in 2005 as an answer to the Arduino Uno. Now, why did I do that? Well, there's a couple reasons. You really got to know some history, because I designed this guy back in 1999. I worked with a company that did the board. It's got the microcontroller, everything basically an Arduino has, and then I designed these shield, but I just called them plug-in boards, that would go on top. You plug it in, you build your circuit, and then what you could do is just unplug it and set it aside with the code, and then you could plug in another one and start a new design. So it's kind of like the early shields, and it worked great. Now, when Arduino came out, I love that stacking connection scheme, and there were so many great shields coming out, I wanted to use those. But Arduino used an AVR microcontroller, and I was a PIC microcontroller fan, and it's like Ford versus Chevy, but they use different software tools, different hardware tools, and I didn't want to have to relearn something new. So it was easier for me to design my own that would use those Arduino shields, but I could program the PIC microcontroller. Another thing I didn't really like about the Uno was it used a bootloader, which made it easier for beginners to program, but it locks you into some things like crystal frequency, and then you have to pre-program the chip or buy pre-programmed chips with the bootloader in it. Where mine, I designed it with a programming header, so I could program the part directly. Now Uno has this little header at the back, but it's really not how the Arduino is designed to be used. They really expect you to use the bootloader. So I designed mine so I could use more of the professional tools and a professional programmer. So I designed it around the PIC I2, which was very popular back then. This has since been discontinued by Microchip, but they open sourced the design. So this is actually open sourced as well. So between these two, it's completely open source hardware design. And because they open sourced it, I actually designed my own, and then you can buy various ones all over the place now that are identical in operation to the PIC I2, because it's all open source, and you can get these things. I built this for like 10 bucks. You can get these for under $30, a lot of times under $20 for a programmer. And then you can program not just one chip, but a whole family of chips. And then the other advantage to using a programmer like this is you plug it in, and now I have full debug capabilities through professional tools. I can run to breakpoints, I can change registers, I can really analyze my programs, which I really can't do with Arduino. And I can use any IDE, plus I can program in BASIC, Assembly, C, Pascal. There's all kinds of compilers out there for the PIC. And I can change this chip. It's just a blank chip. So even though you can now get these guys, these Unos for like, $8 to $10 easily, I can just unplug this chip, plug a new one in, and I can get these chips for under $2. So it's, in the long run, this is cheaper, although initially it's more cost. So this is what I want to use on the channel. So what I wanted to do is recapture this setup here. And I wanted to do that just through a 3D print. So I modified an Arduino print, which is awesome. There's so many great Arduino prints out there. So this was designed for the Arduino, but I changed the name to CHEPINO, opened up a connector, but because I designed my CHEPINO to be the same size, it snaps right in. So I'll show you how I modified this and printed it in two colors actually, and how I did that in Simplify 3D. And I've even changed the name a little bit to CHEPINO, because I may have some design changes I want to do to this. So that may become CHEPINO. I don't know. It was kind of a fun play on the words. So anyway, let me show you how I made this. And now you know the history of all this if you see this in future videos. Plus, my very first video on this YouTube channel was actually assembling a CHEPINO module. Let me show you that real quick. Here's the design that I started with and modified. It's by user Ethanka on Thingiverse. This is so easy to modify in Tinkercad. I brought the .stl file in, and then really I got 3 steps here, and I'm just going to do an undo process to show you what I did. So I've got a block for the connector cutout, I got a block to take away the Arduino symbol, and then I got my words CHEPINO. So if I group the block that takes away the symbol, there's my basic platform. I slide in my CHEPINO word, and then the block is in position for the cutout for the connector, and group that all together, and there's my design. It was that simple and easy. So I just needed to export this .stl and bring it into Simplify 3D. Now in Simplify 3D, I'm actually going to do 2 processes because I want to do a 2-color. So let me show you the first process. Well, actually, let me show you both. This is the full design. Now if I slide this down, you can see at layer 35, or a Z height of 7.38, is where the words start to print and nothing else. So what I went into the first process, and I said stop printing at that 7.38, and I called that process 1. When I slice that, you can see there's CHEPINOs just starting to show up, but it's not complete. So then I saved that as 1 file. Then I went back and sliced a second one, said start at 7.38, that's process 2. I just sliced that guy, and now you can see the words are floating. So I'm going to export 2 different files and print those separately. So here they are, CHEPINO base 1, CHEPINO base 2. So I'm going to select CHEPINO base 1, print this on my Creality CR10, and here it is completed. I did it in a black inland PLA. Came out nice. I love the way my printer, my CR10 prints. So now the next step was to just change filament, heated it up, and I loaded up red, and then I clicked on CHEPINO base 2. And once I clicked on that, it started printing, and this didn't take long at all, and it printed in red the CHEPINO. And my design was done. Now there's some stringing here on the lettering, so there's some difference between the 2 different filaments, but that was easy to clean up. Here it is with the CHEPINO module installed. I also installed the breadboard, and I cleaned up the lettering, and this looks really good. It snapped together perfectly. I had no issues with this. And then I can install the programmer, and this thing's ready to start building and programming and using in my lab. So this is how the final assembly went together. I did create a couple variations, red base with black lettering and a red base with CHEPINO instead of CHEPINO. So I got a lot of different options here. So this turned out really good. I kind of like the red on black more than the black on red, but I don't know, let me know in the comments below which one you guys like better. I really like the CHEPINO name. That's versus CHIPINO, it's CHEPINO. If you know a little more history, the CHIPINO actually comes from the fish soup story, that fishermen would go out and bring in their fish for the day. At the end of the day, they would share a little bit of their catch into a big community soup. And that was called CHEPINO, although it's spelled a little different. So I took a variation off that word because I wanted open source. I wanted everyone to contribute. Go out, do what you want to do with the CHEPINO, but contribute back to it. It didn't really happen, but that's where the name came from. So now changing it to CHEPINO puts it more back in my court. Now I don't own the commercial rights to this anymore. I gave that up, sold that off, but I still have control over the open source design. So if I want to change this and go to CHEPINO, I have that right to do it. Although it's open source, people can kind of do what they want with it. Just it's non-commercial, so you can't build it and then sell against it and compete. That was part of the agreement I gave up, and Howtronics controls all that. But that's fine with me. I have some ideas of maybe a next generation. I may do that on the channel at some point. But this is definitely something that's near and dear to my heart, so I wanted to share it with you guys. That's it for this week. If you like this, maybe check out some of the other projects that are popping up over here. If you want to help support the channel, $1 a month to Patreon, it really helps. If nothing else, click on that CHEP logo and subscribe. We're getting real close to 20,000 subscribers. That's kind of amazing when I think about it. So that's it. I'll see you next time on Filament Friday.